What if all we thought we knew about Sister Wives was really just a fraction of the truth? What if that serene quiet we've witnessed for years was actually a ruse? And what if the very woman that they attempted to sideline is now the one with all the cards and is finally telling her story? Hi, I'm Amin, and welcome to Sister Wives Daily Scoop, where we're peeling back the curtain and going deep into secrets they didn't want you to see. Today, we're diving into leaked clips, courtroom drama, whispered betrayals, and the slow disintegration of the carefully constructed reality Cody and Robyn went to great lengths to defend. And Mary? She's not going out quietly. She's taking the whole narrative with her. It began in the dead of night, 2:14 a.m. To be precise, when the internet was illuminated, not with an official message or breaking news notification, but with something much more disturbingly intimate. A poorly lit, unsteady 2-minute video posted by an unknown user on a hidden Reddit forum. No slick editing, no titles, just blurry images and indistinct noises. It seemed, at first glance, to be nothing more than a clump of backstage baggage. A tile hall, the sound of paper rustling, footsteps on concrete floors echoing away. It might have been anything. But then, they began to speak. First, they were indistinguishable. Just whispers and white noise. But gradually, the words became discernible. Fans hunched forward, turning it up, playing it through audio processors. And suddenly, it was unmistakable. It was Robyn's voice. Tight, sharp, and obviously frantic. "She's cooking up something," Robyn breathed, her words clipped and gasping. "Mary's spoken to individuals who want her gone. If she reveals the truth, we won't get out of this alive. Cody's toast. We're dead." Then, after a brief, tense pause, Cody's voice came through the static, lower, but no less fierce. His words were cold, angry, and chillingly familiar to longtime viewers. "She doesn't have the nerve," he said, his tone practically dripping with contempt. "She's been threatening this for years. We'll bury her." Now, this wasn't some made-for-TV drama hatched in a writer's room. It wasn't cut for dramatic effect. This was unedited, honest, and it landed like a gut punch for anyone who's been along for the ride with this family from the beginning. The video itself? Grainy, dizzying, but the message? Clear as a bell. This wasn't a passionate argument. It was a battle strategy. A peek behind the veil where Mary's silence wasn't merely anticipated, it was compelled. Before moderators could confirm the origin of the video, however, it was too late. The firestorm had begun. Fans downloaded it, reposted it, and analyzed each sentence. Some even started quoting Cody's icy statement online, repeating it like a war cry. "Her image belongs to us." And just like that, the fairy tale Sister Wives had spent more than a decade spinning came apart in hours. While the web went wild with theories, timelines, and frame-by-frame analyses of that creepy film, Mary? She just sat there in silence. Outside her window, snow fell in heavy, silent flakes, blanketing the small Utah town with a quiet, soothing stillness. She wasn't in Flagstaff anymore. There were no cameras tracking her, no makeup technicians fussing, no producers murmuring directions into an earpiece. She was just Mary now, alone, snuggled up in a warm blanket, hands folded around a steaming cup of tea, with her phone ringing incessantly on the table next to her. Everyone was clamoring for a statement. The producers, old co-stars, podcasters, interviewers, even some therapists she hadn't spoken with in years were contacting her. But Mary? She wasn't shaken. Not at all. Because the truth is, she had been prepared for this moment for a very long time. She had not uttered a peep when the lights went out. She had not complained when editors sliced her tale into infinitesimal bits. And she did not protest when her existence was condensed to a few clips. But every evening, after the commotion subsided and the outside world was still, she would sit before her own camera. No lights, no filters, no production team to polish the rough spots. It wasn't revenge. It wasn't rage. It was holding on to the truth, the pieces of her life they fought so desperately to take away. In one of those low-key, unfiltered clips, Mary appeared exhausted, eyes rimmed from too many nights without sleep. Her words shook, not out of fear, but out of finally giving herself permission to feel it all. "They think I'll stay," she said softly, staring straight into the lens. "They think I'll keep protecting the brand, protecting him. But I'm done. I'm done carrying their secrets. I'm done carrying their shame." And in that moment, Sitting in that small, snowy room, Mary wasn't some broken, discarded wife. She was free. With each word, it was evident. Mary was no longer afraid. She had nothing more to hide and nothing more to lose. She had truth, she had timing, and she had the one thing they could not take from her, her voice. But it wasn't long before events took a darker turn. As Mary's submissive confessions spread like wildfire over the internet, something else began seething beneath the surface. Evidence. It started with a leaked confidential email from TLC's very own PR team. At face value, it was innocent looking, merely a friendly note citing concerns about Mary's emotional well-being. But hidden between the lines was something very much more sinister. The email showed that Robyn had been contacting podcast hosts and mental health experts who had interviewed Mary, portraying herself as the concerned individual. But to others, it seemed like more than worry. It appeared to be manipulation, like Robyn wasn't merely getting out of the way of Mary, she was actively cutting her off. Then the kicker, a cease and desist letter signed personally by Robyn, directed at a small podcast that had quietly asked Mary to appear. The letter claimed the podcast attempted to solicit damaging content that might damage Robyn and Cody's finely groomed reputation. That cease and desist notice? It seemed like another bit of legal documentation intended to preserve Cody and Robyn's reputation. But to the people who'd been following this whole thing apart, it didn't smell right. It felt like censorship, pure and simple. The tale wasn't gossip anymore. It was beginning to resemble a well-coordinated mission. But the moment that finally broke it all wide open wasn't from a lawyer. It was from Mary herself. She shared a plain black and white Instagram story. No words, no fancy filters, just her hand wrapped around an aged lease agreement for her Las Vegas home. In the corner, hardly visible upon initial glance, was a small sticky note with faded script. The handwriting on it read, "Don't say anything yet. Let's handle this in-house." It was Robyn's script, black and white. Her voice wasn't a whisper now. It was written, plain as day for all to see. This was no longer about old documents. This was evidence of something much worse than a dispute. It was betrayal, silent, insidious, and masked as concern. And for the first time, the fans weren't just angry, they were awake. And then Cody lost it. Within less than a minute and a half, the man who'd maintained such tight control over his persona utterly fell apart. A leaked video from set caught him in the middle of a rant. His words were bitter, jagged, and laced with a combination of fury and desperation. "She has no appreciation," Cody snarled, his anger trembling with rage. "She wants to destroy everything I worked for her. For what? A tale? To be the victim?" The room had gone dead quiet, not out of respect, but out of sheer discomfort. A producer tried to calm him down, but Cody kept spiraling. Security was called in, and just like that, the man who had been the face of Sister Wives for over a decade was walked off set. No network statement followed, no press conference, just a leak, a screenshot of an internal HR memo quietly circulating online. It read, "Because of confrontation with production staff and refusal to comply with filming demands, Cody Brown will be temporarily taken off Sister Wives production for 18 days. It was a small aside in corporate jargon, but in fact, it was a huge change. For the first time in history, the show was going on, without Cody. And Robyn? She wasn't mad Cody had finally stepped over a line. He'd done that enough before. No, what took her aback was the fact this time, the line was followed through. Robyn's authority had always functioned quietly in the background. She didn't have to yell as long as Cody was there to catch all the flack, take all the criticism, and spin the narrative in her direction. But now, Cody was no longer in the picture. And the protective walls she'd relied on, they weren't simply crumbling, they were being scrutinized. Producers set out excavating through past footage, moments that had been omitted from the cutting room floor, plots that were cut, moments that, in retrospect, no longer felt like innocent snips. They sounded like deliberate deletions, silent manipulations, whispered debates, side remarks, and tone changes that had quietly defined the show's narrative all along. Cody may have blown his top on set, but it was Robyn whose well-honed image began to chip. With Cody eliminated from the equation, the show was no longer in their control. And then the story started unfolding. It wasn't a dramatic scene, no yelling, no press statement. Just one silent black and white photo uploaded without notice on Mary's Instagram story. No caption, no note. From first sight, it didn't amount to much. Merely Mary's hand, firm but clenched, holding a worn lease from the Las Vegas years. A faded paper, nothing showy. It seemed like your average paperwork. But what put folks in shock wasn't the lease. It was what was attached to it. A yellow post-it, edges crisping slightly with age. 5 words, scribbled in handwriting, immediately recognizable to longtime fans. Don't talk about this yet. And below that, in gentler letters, let's handle this in-house. Robyn's autograph lay there in plain sight. It moved fans more than any dramatic on-screen admission ever could, because it was more than what the note meant. It was what it said. Robyn hadn't instructed Mary to keep quiet. She'd spoken. She wasn't hinting. She was commanding. That photograph didn't require blaring headlines or ominous music. It didn't need to scream. It was silent, but in a manner that was completely deafening. On one picture, the entire family harmony they'd attempted to market for years started to break down. It wasn't about a lease anymore. It wasn't about a home. It was about a woman being instructed to step quietly out of the way, to vanish when it suited someone else's narrative. The sticky note wasn't big, but the message? It bellowed. Fans didn't require further information. They'd been following long enough to understand perfectly well what they were witnessing. That small note verified every doubt that had been simmering for years. Robyn hadn't only gained from Mary's silence. She'd written it. And this time, it wasn't filtered through fancy editing, glossy reunion specials, or those carefully crafted confessionals we've seen so many times. It was raw, unpolished, and above all else, real. Then came something even more unexpected. No fancy promotion, no teaser posts, no dramatic countdown. Just a quiet video upload, at midnight no less, on a tiny YouTube channel no one had ever heard of before. The channel's name? Truth from Liz's Porch. A single plain video, one unadorned thumbnail, and a title that chilled the spines of devoted fans. The Uncensored Journal of Mary, Before They Rewrite Me. There was no music, no lighting stunts, no glam makeup for 9 raw minutes. There was only Mary, dressed in a warm gray sweater, sitting on a worn wooden porch swing, with snowflakes gently falling in her hair. Her voice trembled, not with rage, but with something profound. It wasn't anger that colored her words. It was grief. "I gave them everything I had," Mary whispered, her voice just above a sigh. You could practically feel the heft in her words, as if she'd been lugging them around for years. "When I felt like screaming," she confessed, "I remained silent. When I was gaslit, I remained faithful. When they served me betrayal, edited and packaged for the small screen, I sat there and I accepted it." She dropped into silence for a very long time. The sort of silence that kept the room heavy, where you don't even want to breathe too hard. And then she spoke, plain, steady, with a quiet kind of strength. "But this is my voice, and I'm the only one who gets to shape it now." She didn't throw out names. She didn't point fingers. This wasn't about revenge. It was about a woman refusing to be erased. She spoke the truth, about a man who'd made her heartache an agenda, about wives who'd enveloped her in their concern like a snare, about how her pain had been distorted into suspicion. She didn't shout. She didn't need to. They sliced. They were honest. And they cut deep. By sunrise, the world had heard. That subdued 9-minute video? It had already garnered more than 3.2 million views. Hundreds of thousands of comments flooded in, many not from your average reality TV viewers, but from individuals who got it. Survivors, tellers of truth, women who had been gagging on their own silence for years too. All of a sudden, this wasn't just another television scandal. It was life. Mary's voice, once cut up into fast confessionals or relegated to the background, now drove the narrative. And this time, nothing could shut her up. No editing subterfuge, no slick PR spin, no threats of lawsuits. This wasn't some tabloid splash either. It wasn't rumor from a podcast or an illicit leak. It came direct from family. One afternoon, without warning and without buildup, Robyn's estranged half-sister, Belle, went on TikTok. No intro music, no pyrotechnic graphics, just a level, steady stare into the camera. And 6 words that ran shivers through the internet. "If you wish to see the real Robyn, take a seat." That followed a 45-minute video that did not scream or accuse dramatically. It just stripped everything bare. Belle didn't come to gossip. She wasn't bitter or upset. She was steady, almost excessively so. And the manner in which she presented her story? Chilling. She took audiences through their childhood, what it was like to grow up under Robyn's shadow. She described how Robyn had discovered, at an early age, that tears were a weapon. When Robyn cried, Belle stated matter-of-factly, people bent. She didn't imply that Robyn manipulated people as a victim. She said it was an art form, a strategy. As told by Belle, Cody desired a partner to cry on command when he was turning the knife, and Robyn learned how to do that. Belle continued to tell of years of guilt that was religious, emotional, guilt that was worked up and measured to conform to appropriately disguised love and sympathy. And she asserted that all of it had been scripted. The video went viral. In just one day, it reached 10 million views. And in an instant, Robyn's image, the long-standing portrait of loving wife, misunderstood peacemaker, woman with the biggest heart, began to fray right before everyone's eyes. When Robyn finally did reply, it didn't matter. Her remark came via a publicist, cold, reserved, and obviously drafted by an attorney. She declared, "The exploitation of family issues for public spectacle breaks my heart." But there was no heart left in it, no ownership, no humility, no vulnerability. And to a lot of viewers, particularly those who had been watching intently for decades, it wasn't only disappointing. It was confirmation. The woman who had spent more than a decade behind a well-guarded cloak of innocence now stood in the spotlight with no script left to hide behind. Cody attempted to mend it the only way he could think of, by racing to court, like a man frantically trying to stuff the genie back into the bottle. He submitted a 57-page suit in Coconino County Court, charging Mary with infringing on their mutual agreements of privacy and harming the so-called Brown family brand. And he wasn't merely seeking an apology, he was seeking $230,000 in damages and a gag order from the court to muzzle her. But sincerely, the paper didn't sound very much like an actual lawsuit. It sounded more like a tantrum encased in formal legal language. And Mary? She didn't rush to have a press conference. She didn't retain some flashy lawyer. She just flipped on her camera. The video began with a tinny little laugh. Not derisive, not bitter, just weary, as if she'd been worn out by just how formulaic it had all become. "It's a brand now, isn't it?" she said, looking directly into the camera. "I thought it was a family." Then she raised a piece of paper, crumpled at one corner, the signature blurred and worn down. It wasn't from TLC. It wasn't from an attorney. It was from Robyn, a 2020 dated draft of a non-disclosure agreement. Mary said it followed a fight over money. Christine had not signed it. Neither had Janelle. It was never enforced. Regarding the camera, Mary's tone was soft, but her voice didn't shake. "You're ashamed of my tale now," she said. "But you don't get to dictate it. You allowed them to tag me. Broken, cold, dormant. You allowed Robyn to distort my silence into instability." She stopped for a moment, then uttered the words that appeared to rattle the internet. "I'm not unstable. I'm free." The court wasn't impressed with Cody's lawsuit either. The judge dismissed the injunction with barely a thought. Legal commentators described it as weak, performative, and honestly, an absolute PR disaster waiting to happen. And with that, Cody's desperate attempt to bottle up the story just doused it in gasoline. But ultimately, it wasn't the court decision that actually did him in. It was Mary's voice, calm, even, and out of his control, saying the one word he'd spent years trying to prevent: no. The actual change wasn't announced with a breaking news flash or some dramatic TV declaration. It arrived stealthily. One day, TLC's trailer for Sister Wives Season 19 was the usual song and dance. Muted lighting, soothing piano music, Robyn and Cody discussing fresh starts and new beginnings. Then, poof, it vanished. Taken down, silently. Abruptly, the screen unfolded on Mary, moving slowly down the still, vacant halls of her former Flagstaff apartment. Her footsteps sounded softly, little phantoms of the past. Then Christine, standing assertively in her kitchen, looking hard at someone just out of camera range. Her tone was hard, but even. "For too long, none of us talked," she said. And we were damaged by that silence. Janelle stepped up next, her voice shaking a little, but firm enough to be heard. "We thought keeping the family safe meant swallowing the truth," she said. "But all it actually did was erase us." This wasn't merely a storyline adjustment, it was an earthquake. TLC wasn't simply premiering a new season. They were rewriting the very narrative they'd contributed to keeping safe for more than a decade. And Robyn and Cody, the pair that had once been the network's brightest hub, they were nowhere to be seen, gone from their own story. The shifts didn't come with a bang. They snuck in, silent and measured. Suddenly, promotional footage for Sister Wives featured no sign of Cody or Robyn. Their faces were erased, press packets were distributed to the media without their names. Even the show's jaunty theme music, gone, replaced with something mellow, mournful, haunting. Then came the moment that shook everybody. It wasn't supposed to be filmed. A private meeting picked up by accident, just thin walls and a camera left rolling nearby. Robyn's voice came through, tense, urgent, almost frantic. "You're not hearing me," she said, her words sharp. "If Mary tells the truth, everything changes. The whole story shifts. TLC becomes part of it." The room beyond went completely quiet. She wasn't wrong. For years, they'd been protected by the network, censoring the worst of it, glossing over the cracks, taking sloppy chaos, and making it tidily packaged drama. But now, that was gone. And the women who had been kept on the sidelines for so long, Christine, Janelle, Mary, they were no longer backdrop. They'd become the point, not as victims, but as the new core of the show. Not all stories are given a second chance, but this one, TLC had come to their conclusion. And it was no longer about Cody. By the time the major tell-all episode rolled around, viewers weren't watching for surprises. They were watching for the reckoning. Host Suki Krishnan let the moment not pass her by. Calm, steady, but resolute. She stared directly at Robyn and asked the question fans had been screaming about for years. "Why won't you watch the old episodes, Robyn? Why do you always avert your gaze?" Robyn tripped. Her voice was shaking, just barely enough that it sounded like she was being emotional. But something about it seemed off. "They're too painful," she said quietly. "Too destructive." But here's the thing. The camera didn't cut away. It lingered. And in that tense, awkward shot, Robyn did something that made people's jaws drop. She smiled. Not a wide, toothy grin, but a soft, almost smirky little smile. And there, behind her on the screen, began playing old scenes. Cody gaslighting, belittling, manipulating words. All the scenes fans had been complaining about for years. The difference slammed home. Janelle didn't mince words. She gazed directly into the camera and said what everyone already knew, but no one on the show had had the guts to say out loud. "You can't even mention Robyn without Cody shutting down," she said bluntly. "She's his sacred cow, untouchable. That's the truth." Nobody flinched. Nobody argued. Because in that room, everybody finally saw it for what it was. This wasn't a family anymore. It was a crumbling kingdom. Its crown cracked, its walls coming down. Christine was questioned about Mary's breaking point. She did not hesitate. "Her story was rewritten for years," Christine told simply. "We all saw it. We just remained silent." The words lingered in the air, not with shame, but with something more burdensome. Clarity. It seemed everyone in the room was holding one final breath before the storm finally broke. And Cody? He did not fight back. He did not yell. He did not defend himself. He simply sat there, jaw gritted, eyes far away, utterly silent. The man who used to dominate every room he entered, the loudest voice, the biggest presence, had been reduced to a shadow of himself. Whatever tale he believed he controlled had eluded him. He was no longer the storyteller. He was merely another man trapped in the truth he had attempted to conceal. And the women? They were no longer intimidated by him. They had reclaimed their voices. The narrative had been passed from one hand to another, permanently. If you've ever felt that shift, if you've ever seen through the edits, if you've always known, deep down, that something just wasn't right, this moment, it's for you. And let me tell you, Mary's voice? Oh, this is just the beginning. If you're ready for more of these deep dives, the untold stories, and the proof they can't hide anymore, make sure you're subscribed right here to Sister Wives Daily Scoop. I'm Amin, and we're not just watching a family fall apart, we're witnessing something far bigger. This is about voices that won't stay silent anymore. Go ahead, tap that like button, and I'd love to hear your take. Drop your thoughts down in the comments below.